Copic Markers. I also will outline him first, and this pen is a Copic multi-liner pen, which is amazing and a lifesaver. They have different thicknesses, but I use the 1 thickness, so it's pretty thin here. But yeah, I'll show you how I color stitch. I also created this color palette, which is with Copic Markers. It shows you the colors that I'm using today. Whenever I like to color, I usually use at least 2, most likely 3 colors whenever I'm applying different shades. I most likely have a light color and a dark color and 1 or 2 colors that are in between, and I will show you how I apply them today. So hopefully this is helpful. I'll show that to you later on. But first off, I'm going to be using my Copic multi-liner to outline stitch. This way I can get rid of any of the pencil lines that you see here. So going ahead and outlining him is the first step. So now I have everything except for his legs. Again, outlining things that I know are going to be in front, like his toes here. And also making any adjustments. So I want to make his toe a little bit bigger, and I will make it bigger that way. And that way you just don't accidentally outline over it. For example, I could have, for the claws, drawn a line straight through, which is fixable, but it's always nice to have it done the correct way first off, then you don't have to make as many adjustments at the end. And I turn my page so that I can, again, draw towards myself, which is what I like to do, and you will figure out what works best for you as you draw along, but that is really what I find works best for me, especially when I am drawing circles. To me, it makes a really big difference when I draw towards myself. And again, trying to be confident in those pencil or pen strokes. That way, it's one fluid motion. All right, and now I can go ahead and draw this, his little circular pads on his feet. And now you're ready to erase. And now I will go ahead and start coloring him. So the first thing that I do is I almost always color in sequence. For example, I'm going to be coloring all of Stitch's lighter colors first, and then his outer colors. Stitch really only has 4 main areas of coloring. He has his mouth here, and his chest, and his little eyeshadows in one color. And then in another color, which I'm going to be using B24, I'm going to be outlining his whole body in that color. And then his nose is another color, and then his ears are obviously pink, but for the most part, he's pretty simple. So first off, I'm going to be using these 2 colors. I have 2 of these markers because one is running out of ink. But first what I do is I apply the lightest layer, or my base layer. So for Stitch, it is BOO, if you have Copic markers with you. And I'm just applying a light layer around the eyes. What's important to note with Copic markers, for me that's helped, is layering. If things aren't blending right, then you really want to apply more layers, which is somewhat difficult, especially for a color like this, because I really do want his eye shadows to be lighter. So that makes it somewhat difficult, but I'll go ahead and apply the base layer that you see here. The next thing that I go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and apply my second color. Normally, like I said, I have 3 different colors, a light color, a dark color, and a color in between, but since his eyes are so light, I am just going to be using one color. The important thing that you have to have here is your light source. So I think that my light source is going to be coming from a certain direction, and once you figure that out, then you can really start applying that to your drawing. And what I mean by that is light direction creates shadows. So here I'm going to be applying this shadow over here. And then once you apply that darker layer, I always go over it with a lighter color. So you can kind of see how I blended those 2 colors together. So again, applying the darker color, which I don't want to do too much of here, and immediately going in with a lighter color, starting from the dark that you just colored in and going back towards the light. What that does is it blends the 2 colors together, and it leaves some part that you did not recolor with your lighter color, so it's a little bit lighter on the top. So I'm going to be going ahead and doing the same thing on this side. Again, applying the dark color, and then immediately, and that's important, is you have to do it immediately because the Copic markers blend together with the lighter color. Going ahead and doing the bottom here. I always like adding darker colors to the bottom of eyes. I just think that it makes it pop a little bit more. And going with my lighter color, my base color, and blending in that blue. All right, so now I have the eyes. Those are all finished and done. Sometimes I go in and add touch-ups with pencil. So like I mentioned, I use Prismacolor pencils, and they're my favorite. They're amazing. I also use Faber-Castells, and those are also both very, very high quality pencils. So what you'll see here is it's important to layer. I'm unfortunately running out of a little bit of ink, but a lot of people get frustrated when they color with Copic markers because they can see different areas to where they stopped and started with a drawing. This is because they haven't applied multiple layers when coloring with the Copic markers. Now, I accidentally colored a little bit further than I wanted to, so I colored a little bit of outside the lines, but that's okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm going over the entire drawing again with the same color, and what this does is it helps you get that even coat, that even layer that you see on some great drawings. Otherwise, it'll really look patchy, I guess is the word I would use to describe it. But now that you've gone over it a couple times, you really have a solid color. So here's when you decide where your light source is going to be. So I want to create a shadow effect on the outside of his mouth, and especially underneath his mouth. Stitch has a very big mouth, and it's one of his main features, so I really want to go ahead and accentuate that feature. Again, it's really important to do this really in sequence, because now that you have this darker color on, you really need to go in right away with the lighter color so that you can blend. Otherwise, the color will sit there and it will make it very, very hard to blend later on. So what I did is I created a little bit of shadow underneath the eye there, and then I went back in with my lighter color and blended it that way. I also want to create a little bit of shadow with the arms here and with the arms here. One of the reasons why I start off coloring with a light color whenever I lay down my colors is you can see that I have unintentionally colored over his arm lines, which isn't a big deal, but especially because I'm going to be going in afterwards with my other colors. Now, here's where I have to be quick, blending the colors. You'll get a hang of it after you do it a few times, but really going both, I start off from dark to light, so coloring this way, and then using the light spot and coloring back this way in order to blend my Copic markers. Again, usually I have 3 colors, but for this sake, since Stitch's colors are so light, I'm only using 2. So that's it. So we've used these 2 colors right here, and now I'm going to be going and using these colors for his body. So with Stitch, to me, his base color is B24, which is what I'm going to be using to color essentially everything that you see here. But I'm also going to be using B21, which is a color that I want to use to help with highlights. So like the top of his head, for example, I can highlight this way. And this is really going to be extremely subtle. All right. So now for the base layer, I also color in sections. So anything that's separated off, like this nose right here separates the eyes and the lower portion of the mouth. Again, once you get going with your Copics, I strongly suggest that you go to town and you go as quick as you can, because otherwise your markers are going to start drying and then you really are playing catch up, which makes it harder to do. I applied a second layer to get that one coat look, and I'm going with the lighter color, and now I'm re-going over it and going to be blending a little bit. I also go in with my lighter color and color in on the dark color, because that blends your light color with the dark color organically. You have it. So I'm also going to be taking a chance. I do somewhat bold colors, I guess you could say, when I color. So I want to add a shadow here by his eyes, being very, very careful about where I place these shadows. One thing that I also do when coloring is I basically fan out. I don't know how else to describe it, but I fan it out like this. So I don't color like all down on the page, but it really just adds a super subtle, very, very subtle feature right there. And I'm going to be adding a little bit here and a little bit there. Again, going over very, very, very quickly. And now I use my last color and make sure that all my colors are blended. I almost always re-go over my drawing with my lightest color. To me, that just helps blend it a little bit more. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and do the next section, which I'm gonna start over here, really trying to color inside the lines. When I first started with Copics, it honestly was difficult for me to color inside of the lines, because the markers do bleed a little bit, and so for me it was somewhat difficult, because I'd have a line and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it would be bleeding over the line. One thing I find helpful is I almost always use this end, which is this tip, instead of the thick tip that's available on Copic markers. To me, that just helps me with the detail. And the good thing is this nose really sections off the face. So there you have it there. And now I'm going to be using my dark color, my B18, to go ahead and draw shadows. which I'm gonna draw here. Anywhere where I think would be covered in a shadow if my light was coming from a certain area is where I go ahead and draw a little shadow there. I always, if there's a point up here, I always start from the top and go down. To me, it's easier to control that way. And again, going back in with my base color, which is B24. I'm also going to be drawing shadows here under the nose. All right, and the last thing I'm going to be doing is, I think I'm going to add a little bit of shadow here. A tiny shadow. I really think that the smallest details can make the biggest difference sometimes. All right, so there you have it. I'll also go ahead and add a shadow there later, but I'm going to finish the rest of this face first. Again, using my base layer, going to do the same thing on the other side. Like I mentioned, I start with the pointy end here and go at the top and mark my way down. To me, it just helps me a lot with the details. Again, point and draw down. Point, draw down. And again, this took a lot of practice. My strong suit, I would say, are color pencils. That's my bread and butter. Copic markers are definitely, were definitely not my bread and butter. Now I would say that they are, but it did take quite a bit of practice. Again, outlining the bottom of the ear here. And using my base color to go over that again, like starting from the dark side and moving towards the light side. I like that little Star Wars reference there. But dark side to light side, dark side to light side can definitely help you. Going over here, using my point again. Slightest shadow under his eye. And now I'll go ahead and do the shadow under his nose. See here, I get a little uncomfortable because I am coloring away from me, which is what I didn't want to do. But I've practiced enough to where I know that I am able to do it. And I'm mostly doing it for the camera here. But there you go. Now you have his face. I'm going to quickly go ahead and draw in the rest of the body because you know how it works now. Alright, so now we're pretty much done here. All we really have left are the nose and the mouth. And I'm also going to be adding in a little bit darker color for this here. let's see. Wasn't sure what color I wanted to do this in. But I think I'm going to use, actually I'm going to decide on that later. But right now I'm going to be doing the nose a little bit. I'm going to be using B18 as my base and B39 and then also black as well. So B18 is actually the shadow color that's right up here. So it really starts to blend in a little bit. I find that I'm able to add a lot more detail when it comes to using my color pencils. And so that's what I'll end up doing. I'll go back in and use color pencils if I want to. But for right now, I'm just gonna be using this. Going back over with the 18, my B39 color is very, very dark. Again, going dark to light. And then going back over. And there you have subtle color change. And now the black comes in for Stitch's nostrils. I always save black for the end because obviously it's the darkest color and you can color over anything that you've missed. Alright, so that's done. I'm also going to be coloring over with his claws. His claws are so small that they can just be one color. And again, I colored over with my lighter color for Stitch's body, but it's fine because the claw color I knew was much darker. Almost done with this here. And if you ever make a mistake, like I just made a mistake there, you can correct it. For example, what I did is I ended up making that a little bigger. I'm actually going to grab a marker here and just color over this. Alright. Now, last but not least, we're going to do his ears. Again, I have 3 colors, a light color, a dark color, and then a base medium color. His ears I can just do really, really quickly. They're pink. Again, I want to lay down the lightest color first, which is usually my base color, which happens to be R81 for those of you who have Copic markers. Honestly, probably should have done this before the blue, because just in case the blue bled into the pink, but we're gonna roll with it. Again, applying that second layer to get that solid color. Now here I am gonna turn a little bit because I want the darker color to really outline, give a shadow to the ends of the ear. Again, with that fanning out look. Hopefully it's not too hard to see upside down. And then once again, going over with my light color to blend it all in. Again, going from dark to light. And there you have it. So going over for the last ear. I almost always save the eyes for last because to me, the eyes really, really do bring the character to life. And I'm a little bit more careful with the black because it's black in a very unforgiving color. Just like right here, I had to make the eye a little bit bigger because I accidentally made a tiny mistake, which is doable, or fixable, I guess. There you go, there's one eye. See how it's really starting to come to life here? Our stitch. Again, with things as big or as unforgiving as black, I'm coloring towards me because I know that's where I have the most control. And there you have it. Stitch, ladies and gentlemen. Hope that you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave a like or comment, but see you next time.